So hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Paul Grohusky. I'm one of the engineering librarians, and we're going to spend the next hour talking about finding research funding. Just a quick overview of Zoom, how Zoom is set up for this meeting. We muted video and microphones of everyone as you entered the meeting. We ask that you keep your microphones muted. Please use the chat to enter questions and comments, and my colleagues will be monitoring the chat and making sure that that I answer questions in a timely manner. Closed captions are available. So you can look for the caption icon on the bottom of your Zoom window if you would like to follow the captions. And we are recording the meeting. We will be sharing the recording and the slide deck next week. So today's agenda is very much kind of 1 hour of me talking to you. And one way that you can stop me from talking is ask questions as you have them. Please put them in the chat. And again, Lena and Paul will be watching the chat and interrupting me to make sure that I answer your questions. For anyone who's new to the University Library, we'll give you a really quick introduction to the engineering library. This workshop and others in our series are sponsored by the engineering librarians. And so we know there are a lot of engineering folks who registered, but we know there are folks from other subject areas as well. We're going to give an overview of the research funding and grants guides, and then demonstrations of 2 databases that the librarians recommend as sources for finding funding opportunities. The databases are Pivot and Foundation Directory Online, or FDO. And, okay, trouble advancing my slides. So as we mentioned, we are the engineering librarians. So you can see our names, our contact information, and the departments that we work with listed on this slide. Feel free to reach out to any of us at any point where you have questions about your engineering research. If you're not sure which one of us to contact, an email to enginelibrarians@umich.edu, the address shown on the bottom of the slide, reaches all of us. We are available for consultations by appointment, and you can schedule an appointment directly into any of our calendars by beginning at this webpage, the Appointments Engineering webpage, selecting the relevant librarian by subject area, and then selecting the date that you'd like to meet and the time, and click continue and fill in the form, and your appointment will be scheduled directly into one of our calendars. And if you're not in the College of Engineering, you can find your librarian at the page linked here, which I think Paul is putting into the chat. And I'm going to take this moment to ask my colleague Paul Barrow to introduce himself, because he is one of the librarians that you will find here. Go ahead, please, Paul.
Yes, hi, I am Paul Barrow. I'm the Foundations and Grants librarian. I would be happy to talk to anybody. And I just put my site into the chat. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And when I talk about finding research funding with my colleagues on the grants team, Paul is Paul and I am other Paul. So there are a couple of research guides that we have created for your use. And I'm going to take a moment now to, this is a little clunky, but this is the way it's been working for me. I need to stop my share, exit my slide deck, and then reshare to open Google Chrome. Okay, so this is the research funding and grants guide. This is a guide that Paul and some of our colleagues at the Taubman Health Sciences Library and I put together as a starting point for finding funding. And on the page, you'll find quick links to the databases that we'll be talking about today. So there's Pivot, there's FDO, and really the important thing that I'd like to point out here is if you're not sure where to start, contact the library, and clicking this link will give you a fill-in form that you can fill in to request a consultation with a librarian. The second guide that I want to point out, and particularly since we are targeting graduate students in our promotion for this workshop, is there's a student funding guide. And in addition to resources like Pivot and Foundation Directory Online, this guide includes resources for finding scholarships and fellowships and loans. And so those of you who are students may find this guide helpful. And I'll apologize again as I kind of go back to my slides. That's a quick introduction to the library and to the research guides. I would like to pause for just a moment to ask if there are any questions before we dive into the databases. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so let's go ahead and talk about Pivot. So Pivot is a subscription database. The library licenses it for your use. It is an index of grant opportunities, and it pulls information from governments and foundations. It pulls information from governments around the globe, but focuses on North American and Western European government data. Anyone who has worked with grants.gov to find United States federal funding opportunities can know that everything that you find in grants.gov, you will also find in Pivot. I recommend that you use Pivot because I find that it's easier to search, and it also gives you tools for tracking and saving searches and saving grant opportunities. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. To access Pivot, you can follow this link. You can follow the link on one of the research guides. And we'll do that next. So, oops, excuse me. So I'm back in my Chrome window. I'm looking at the Funding for Students guide. I'm going to follow the link to Pivot. If you're off campus and you're following along, you may be prompted to log in with your University of Michigan login credentials, your unique name, password, and dual code. I am on campus, so it recognizes me as a U of M user, and it gives me direct access. So we're here now in Pivot. On Tuesday this week, I sent I sent information about getting started with pivots. So let me quickly go here. I sent a link to this page and information about creating an account in Pivot. We'll talk in a bit about why it's important to have an account in Pivot. If you haven't seen this page, Paul is just sharing the link now in the chat. And you can create an account here. It's a free account. When you create your account with your email address, use your UMISH email address rather than your Gmail or address at a different server, because Pivot needs to recognize that you're a University of Michigan user to allow you to create an account on our instance of Pivot. I go back to Pivot. Since I have an account, the first thing I want to do is log in. And now I am logged in. It's telling me that I'm here. And again, we'll talk in a bit about why that's important. So something that Paul taught me about Pivot and something that I'd like to do is I'm going to click on the funding tab and just quickly scroll down the page to show you how many dollars of funding are available in Pivot. And this number changes every day. Yesterday it was 115.04, but currently there are $115.05 billion worth of funding and funding opportunities indexed in Pivot. And if we could help University of Michigan researchers get their hands on just 2 or 3 or 4 of those billions of dollars, we'd be very happy librarians indeed. If I scroll over the window, it breaks it down by subject area. So there are $64 billion in funding for natural sciences. And come on, don't make me a liar. So there are 32 billions in energy sciences and 14 billions in education. So there are a lot of research dollars out there that we hope that you can take advantage of for your work. And the way we find them, the way we find these funding opportunities is to search and pivot. So I'm on the funding tab. I have a search box. I can enter keywords here and I'll get results. However, I find that I get better results if I take advantage of the advanced search and take advantage of the pivot taxonomies. So I'm going to click on advanced search. Again, I see keyword fields where I can enter my keywords. I am going to ignore those and suggest that for your search, what you do is scroll down and use the fields that Pivot has created to tell Pivot, first of all, who you are as a researcher, what kind of funding you're interested in finding, and then the subject area of your research. And another piece that's really important, especially when you're beginning in Pivot, is understanding what does it mean by activity location. And so Paul is going to enter another link in the chat to this page for Pivot funding field descriptions. So as you're beginning your search, if you need to know what does it mean by deadline, you can look at this page and it will tell you. Activity location identifies requirements about where grants may be used. That's potentially important as you go about looking for your funding. So now that I know how fields are defined, I can go back to the Pivot Advanced Search and create my search. So there are several fields. And when I do a search and pivot, I focus on just 4 of them. The first thing that I look at is citizenship. And the reason that I look at citizenship is remember that pivot is showing me government funding opportunities from around the world. Many of these opportunities are limited to citizens of the countries whose governments are sponsoring the opportunities. So I know that I am a United States citizen. I don't have dual citizenship. And so I don't need to see an opportunity that's available only to a citizen of the UK. This being the case, I'm going to select Citizenship United States. Please notice that Pivot has also auto-selected for me unrestricted or unspecified. Some of these opportunities are not restricted to citizens of the countries whose governments are sponsoring them. And I do want to see those. It's just the ones that are restricted that I want to filter out. The next field that I look at is funding type. Information about what do I intend to do with the funding. And if I scroll down here, I see research. So I'm going to select that. However, there are other things that this audience of graduate students might be interested in. So fellowships or postdoc awards. If you're finishing your dissertation soon, these might be of interest to you. Dissertation or thesis funding. This might be of interest to you. And again, select all that apply. I'm going to scroll down a little further to applicant type.
Paul, we have a question.
Oh, thanks, Lena.
Is there a way to narrow down the funding to those that are available to permanent residents of the US who aren't US citizens?
Oh boy. I don't know. And Paul Barrow, I promised you that I was going to call on you a few times during this presentation. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of anything. It's only looking at citizenship, not residence.
Okay. So we're sorry to say that the answer to the question is no. What we do suggest, though, or well, something that you can consider is, do you have a collaborator do you have a collaborator who's citizen of the country that's sponsoring this award, right? So if you're a permanent resident of the United States, but you're not a citizen, can you work with someone who is a citizen and who would be eligible to apply for that grant? Does that help, or I don't want to go on. I don't want to just assume that we're good and go on. Okay, thank you.
Paul, you may also want to keep in mind some of the citizenship requirements are for like DOD or DOE grants, where they are like restricted grants and, may not allow for non-citizens to work on it.
Okay, thanks, Lena. Yes. So Department of Defense and Department of Energy here in the United States may be more restrictive than other foundations such as the National Science Foundation, the NSF. Okay.
Somebody added in chat that sometimes fundings could be granted for both US citizens and permanent residents. This is the case for NSF funding, for example. So you might start looking for US citizen funding and then find out.
Great, thank you for that suggestion. Okay, so the applicant type. This is where you tell Pivot who you are as a grant seeker. And In our case, when you're doing research here at the University of Michigan, you might include academic institution. But again, select as many as apply. So many of you are graduate students, you might select that. Many of you are soon to be graduated and emerging in the field, early career, so you may select that. What I usually recommend for searching pivot is that you begin by casting a broad net and selecting as many things as apply. If you find that you're getting too many results, you can always narrow your search later. I want to pause for just a moment to talk about Boolean operators and how they're working here. So within a field, so for instance, within this funding type field, the Boolean operator is an OR. So pivot is going to return any results any results where the funding type is research or fellowships or dissertation thesis funding. Between the fields, the Boolean operator is an AND. So currently we're telling pivot to return results where citizenship is United States or unrestricted or unspecified, and funding type is research or fellowships or dissertation, and so on. You get the idea. So that's how the Boolean operators are working. So the one field that we skipped, and I'm going to open it now, is this keyword field. And the keyword field is where you tell pivot the subject of your research. And there are two ways to get to the subject areas. You can browse, and if I click on browse, I open up this taxonomy. The carrots are a little hard to see, but I can open. I didn't want to open the education folder. I opened the engineering folder. I can either select an entire folder or open a little bit further and select a subfolder. So I'm going to select environmental engineering. Again, here, as with everywhere else, if there's more than one term that applies to what you're doing, go ahead and enter it. I'm going to close this and just show you the other way to get to the taxonomy. If you're having trouble finding something that matches your terms, you can start typing the term and Pivot will show you where it lives. So for instance, if I'm doing research on carbon dioxide reduction and I'm an engineer, I might expect to find this in the engineering folder somewhere, but actually it lives in the natural and physical sciences folder. So by typing your keyword again, you can find where the keyword lives, and from there, paste it directly into your search. So this is our search. I'm going to scroll down the page a little bit further just to show you that in addition to including terms, you can exclude terms. So, you may know that there are some opportunities that you don't want to see, and the big one for me is the deadline field. If there's something whose deadline is 7 days from today, I'm relatively certain that I'm not going to be able to put together a compelling grant proposal for that opportunity. So I might say, just don't show me that. As you're getting started, I suggest you use excludes with caution. You may be disappointed later down the line to learn that you excluded an opportunity that you wanted to see. But as you get more experience with Pivot, then maybe you want to really run a focus search, and you'll use the exclude. So again, I've created my search. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and click search. And I have 121 results. Used to be that I told people that if you have more than 50, you have too many and you should focus your search. Over the past summer, a student taught me that that is not necessarily always the case. So it falls to you as a researcher to determine, exactly how you want to do this. If you're getting too many results, there are a couple of things that you can do. You can click on Refine Search, go back to the search page, and remove some of those OR operators. What's happening is that we have a lot of ORs in here, right? So removing some of these will remove results. The other thing you can do is look at the filters here on the left-hand side, and clicking any of these omit the things that are no longer relevant, and see just the number of results that match one of these possibilities. I am going to work with these 121 results and just scroll through and see if I see anything on the front page that looks interesting. Okay, so here's a PhD scholarship from the German Federal Environmental Foundation. Don't know exactly why I'm choosing this one, but I am. And clicking on the title from the results page takes you to the Pivot record for the specific funding opportunity. And the Pivot record always begins with a link to the website where you find the funding opportunity in its native home. You should for opportunities that are interesting to you, always look at the website, because that's where you'll get all of the details on exactly what you need to do to submit a successful grant application for this opportunity. The record tells you who the funder is, what type of funder it is, where the funder lives, the amount of money that's available, who the applicant types are. So all of those field headers that we saw on the search page are now showing up in the record page. And as we scroll down, we see an abstract that if you don't read German, or if you don't read German very well anymore, like me, you can cut and paste into Google Translate, or find your German-speaking collaborator who can translate that for you. Pivot shows you deadlines, what's due and when, and something that I learned. So every time I look at Pivot, I think I learned something new. And something that I learned yesterday was that there's a note about a recurrence of the opportunity. And I was looking at an opportunity yesterday with a deadline of November 1st. So here we are on October 28th. I'm not going to get a grant opportunity, a grant proposal in for that thing that's due on November 1st. But it said that it comes up every year. So I might file it away to look at it again next year, if it tells me that the call for proposals recurs. And filing it away is why you want to create a personal account in Pivot. So this scholarship, I want to see it again next year. I can click track here on the right. And that has sent it to my homepage. So before we talk about homepage, I'll pause again and ask if anyone has questions about the search process. Okay, and so seeing nothing coming up in the chat, what I'm going to do now is click on Home. So Home is where my stuff lives in Pivot. And so I have funding opportunities. I have tracked opportunities. I have saved searches, advisor opportunities, and my profile. And since I forgot to show you this, I need to very quickly create another search. Okay, you will invest a reasonable amount of time in creating a good search strategy in Pivot. When you have a good search created, you should save it. And so when I'm happy with the results that I'm getting with the search strategy that I've created, I'll save the search, give it a name. Please notice that Pivot auto selects for you, would you like to receive a weekly email containing new or updated opportunities from this query? So you can turn that off at this point if you don't want the email. You can turn it off at any point in the future. But what this does is it tells Pivot to run the search for you once a week and send you an email about any new grant opportunity that matches your search criteria. So when I save this, it saves it to my home page. And here I have my saved searches. The advisor alert is something that Pivot does on its own. It looks at the information that you used when you created your profile, and it suggests funding opportunities that you might find interesting and sends you a weekly email. The rest of these searches are searches that I saved. And you'll see that for my climate search, Pivot ran the search on October 24th. It found 2 new results, and I got emails showing me that there are 2 new results that might be interesting to me. Tracked is where I save individual funding opportunities. So these are all the opportunities that I'm tracking, and I can always get directly back to the opportunity by simply clicking on the title, and it takes me back to that record page. So I see that we're already at 12:38, and so I'm going to stop with Pivot unless folks have questions, because I also want to show you Foundation Directory Online. Questions before we move on? Okay, so pardon while I get back to my slides. Will the recording be available? Yes. We are recording this session, and we plan to send the recording and the slides to everyone who registered next week. Okay, so that was Pivot. Next, I want to talk about Foundation Directory Online. And Foundation Directory Online is a directory of private foundations within the United States. It indexes upwards of 100,000 foundations. It indexes the foundations and who they are, does not index specific funding opportunities. And how you find funding opportunities is by looking at the foundation's website. Since the data come from United States Internal Revenue filings, Foundation Directory Online is limited to showing you foundations from the United States. And next, we'll take a look at FDO. So once again, whoops, to get to FDO, I follow a link from a library page so that I'm prompted to log in if I need to do that. And I'm simply going to go to FDO. And in FDO, you find grant makers. And what I like to do when I demonstrate FDO is first show you what a grant maker profile looks like in FDO, so you get an idea of what kind of information you'll be finding. So this is the Gates Family Foundation. It is not the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's the Gates Family Foundation based in Denver, Colorado. FDO gives me a link to the foundation's website, and it gives me information about what kind of work they like to find. I'm sorry, what kind of work they like to fund. So they spend a lot of money on education and environment and health, and then others down the line. It shows me where the money is going, information about how big the grants might be that I can expect to get, information on specific grants. So if you want to learn if you want to learn what work this foundation funded and get an idea of how to draft your proposal, you can look at a grant that was funded in the past. Again, it shows us subject areas of funding interests, geographic focus, or where the funding is going, people who they're supporting, and so on. The mission statement of the foundation. Other funders to consider. So as other databases do, FDO is running an algorithm in the background that will suggest other funders that might be interesting to you. And then the section on applications and requests for proposals is very important, because this is where you can learn things like, does the foundation accept unsolicited proposals? Or do they only work with researchers that they reach out and contact? It shows you what deadlines are when the board meets. And a question that sometimes comes up for us in the library is, I plan to be going overseas to collect research data, and I want to do this in the summer, leaving in May as soon as classes let out. And for instance, we'll find a foundation that supports that kind of work, but their board doesn't meet until July. And if you're leaving in May and you need the money in May, you may not want to contact this foundation, because you're not going to hear anything about whether they'll support you until at least July. Information about how much money they have, how much they give, links to the internal revenue filings. Paul Barrow will tell you that if you have trouble sleeping at night, you might take a look at the 990s and read these forms, and they'll put you right to sleep. And then the last thing is the who's who. And I used to just skip over this, but then I recognize that, you may know some of these people. And if you have a personal contact with someone on the board, that can give you a leg up in your grant application. So at least take a peek at the who's who as it's listed on the record. So that's the kind of information you can find. Next, let's talk about how to find it. And as with Pivot, Foundation Directory Online works on its own taxonomy, and this is a link to the taxonomy, and this is where you can go to kind of figure out what is FDO talking about when it's talking about support strategies. I'm going to go back here. As with Pivot, when I'm searching for foundations in FDO, I use an advanced search. And I typically go directly to additional filters because I know there's a filter that's not listed on the top that I'm going to want to use. And here I select just a couple of things. So a subject area is where you tell FDO what you are, what your research area is. FDO is written very much for a non-academic audience, whereas Pivot is built for an academic audience. FDO is not, and so the terminology is going to be a little bit different. It can be worth your time to look through these things and see where you might look for your subject area. As with Pivot, if you don't find it, you can type it in and see if it comes up. So if I'm working with a youth baseball league, I might enter that into my search. Geographic focus kind of maps to activity location in Pivot. Where am I, and where will the funding be used? And so if I type in Michigan here, I see Michigan, but I also see a lot of other things, right? I see Southeast Michigan. I see Washtenaw County. And so as with Pivot, you can select as many of these as apply. Something else about Pivot is that some funders are not necessarily as specific as I send funding only to Michigan, or with the Gates Foundation, we saw that they worked primarily in Colorado, but they'll work anywhere in the Midwest. And so you want to take advantage of all the taxonomy and make sure you're not missing opportunities. And then the last thing that I look at is support strategy. And this maps to funding type in Pivot. Here you tell FDO what you're going to do with the money. So you might be doing research, but you might also be looking for program support. Select as many as apply. You can use other fields to create a more specific search, but for our purposes, I'll just go ahead and click search. And scroll down, and I see that we have 515 grant makers who matched my criteria, right? It shows me grants, it shows me recipients, it shows me the 990 forms, but what I'm after are the grant makers. And if I view all of these and scroll down, I see something called the Consumers Energy Foundation, located just down the road in Jackson. Hover over, you'll get brief information, but then I click on this and I see the full record. And that is searching in FDO. And I'll pause again in case anyone has questions. Okay, so I'm going to stop this share. And Bear with me for just a moment and go back to my slides. Okay.
Paul, we have a question. Could you repeat when you narrow by support strategy, what did you type in?
Okay, so let me go back to stop that share. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my advanced search, the blank screen and additional filters. With support strategy, I didn't really type anything in as much as built a search on using the terms already in Pivot. Okay, so I simply opened the support strategy, field, and I'm sorry, I called it Pivot, it's FDO. I opened the support strategy field in FDO and saw what my choices were. Okay, and there's a box for research and evaluation. If there's an indicator, I can open up a menu and find subheadings under research and evaluation, or select all of them at once. For my search, I also selected program support. And again, if you wonder what these things are, you can go to that taxonomy, click on support strategies, and take a look there and see what it tells you about what does program support mean to FDO, and what is it going to mean in your search. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Great.
Karen says
Thanks.
thanks.
Okay. So let me see if I can make this happen again. So we're almost at the hour, and I just want to tell you there are links to resources. And in addition to the guides and the databases, both Pivot and FDO have excellent YouTube channels where you can find training on using the databases just in time. And those are linked here. And please contact us when you need help, right? So if you're in the College of Engineering and you'd like to talk to an engineering librarian, you can reach all four of us by sending an email to the Engine Librarians at UMich address. And then additionally, we have the two guides, the Research Funding and Grants Guide and the Student Funding Guide. And either of those has a quick link to a help form, sending an email to us. So the next thing I want to do is just ask you, if you have a moment, to fill in our poll. My colleagues and I, Lena and Jamie, Joanna and I, are we'll be sponsoring another workshop series in the winter, and we're just interested in what topics are you interested in. So if you can fill this out, that would be great. As you're filling it out, I'll let you know that there are 2 more workshops in the fall workshop series coming up. Next week, Joanna will be presenting on how to write and implement a data management plan. That is Wednesday the 3rd at noon. And then at the end of the month, at the end of November, we have a representative from IEEE who will be talking about publishing in IEEE journals. However, if you're not if you're not interested in publishing in IEEE, what Jalen presents should be transferable to any scientific publications. Thank you to Joanna. I kind of stole her slides from her earlier workshop. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes, but otherwise, thank you for coming. Thank you for participating in our poll. And please let us know when we can help you find funding for your research. And I'm going to stop the share. And I don't see any questions or hear any questions, so I'm also going to stop the recording. Thank you, everyone.